Friday, traders. Okay, so if you are trading in markets at the moment, you are literally just trading Trump. So you definitely need to be aware of when Trump is speaking, and also be aware of all the Trump headlines that are coming in, because there are a lot of them. Okay, so overnight Trump did speak. He was at Davos at the World Economic Forum, and in that speech he did say quite a few things that were obviously very meaningful. And okay, so the first one, let's touch on the energy statements and policy, and specifically about crude. So Trump basically said that he was going to talk to Saudi Arabia and also OPEC and ask them to lower the crude price. He actually did also lay some blame on both the Saudis and OPEC on the fact that the war with Russia and Ukraine was still ongoing, because of high crude prices. And that high crude prices had allowed Russia to finance and still stay in this war. So he literally basically said that if we got lower crude prices, then that war with Russia and Ukraine would cease basically very soon. But yes, quite unreal that Trump is actually laying the blame for the war in Ukraine on the Saudis and OPEC. Okay, the other thing that Trump did say about crude that was very interesting was that once he gets crude prices lower, then he would basically demand an immediate interest rate cut. Okay, so one of the things about monetary policy is that it is run by the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent. It is not supposed to get pressure from politicians, and especially not the President of the United States basically telling the Fed what to do. So we have a very interesting, very interesting time now with Trump being obviously president. And we have a Federal Reserve meeting next week. So it'll be very interesting to see exactly how Powell plays his cards. But I would suggest that he probably will not be too hawkish, even though he gave basically a hawkish hold in the December meeting. I think maybe he may play down that hawkishness, next week, so he does not get into some sort of fight with Trump within his first week of being president. Anyway, we can talk about that next week. Then the other thing, just with Trump's crude policy and his energy policy, is that he's basically said on numerous occasions that the US holds underneath their feet more crude and gas than any other place on earth, and in his own words he said that they were going to drill baby drill. So Trump is very keen on obviously basically getting his oil producers getting as much crude as possible out of the ground and selling that, making a lot of money on that, and then also trying to get a lot of crude for cheaper production in the US. But there is an issue with obviously trying to get lower crude prices, because if Trump does actually, does get crude a lot lower, that's going to make it very hard for his oil producers then to drill that crude out of the ground, because it's less profitable. Basically drilling crude is very capital intensive, and lower crude prices, if they're too low, those oil producers aren't going to be taking it out of the ground. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how all of that plays out. But regardless, look, Trump did get crude lower overnight in their statements. Crude was down about 1.5% on the close. I would suggest, look, it is very hard fighting Trump on any of his policies. If he wants crude lower, I think that in the short term we probably will see crude trade lower and probably down towards that $70 mark. So look, I wouldn't be buying crude up at these levels at the moment. Maybe a cheeky short is the way forward. Look, some of the other things that Trump mentioned in his Davos speech yesterday. He did mention that on tariff policy, which is something obviously the market is very worried about, that any product that was not made in the United States would get a tariff. So that's basically implying, look, that literally, the whole world will get some form of tariffs. What we do know at the moment, though, is on the 1st of Feb, these immediate neighbours, Canada and Mexico, are certainly going to get tariffs, and he did talk about 25%. Whether or not they are 25%, we'll see. And it looks as if also China will be joining Canada and Mexico on 1st of February with a tariff of around about 10%, which is a lot less than the 60% that he was talking about during his election campaign. So yes, going towards February the 1st, again, it'll be interesting to see how exactly the market does react. When those tariffs come into play. The other thing that Trump also mentioned, which has been quite important, is that he mentioned last night that he wants to make the US the center of the world for both AI and crypto. Certainly Trump is getting a lot of investment from offshore. Just had the head of SoftBank, the CEO of SoftBank, Massason, back in the US. He's pledged $100 billion initially, and Trump asked him if he could increase that to $200 billion. Well, he's come back and says that he's actually willing to potentially do $500 billion. The Saudis have come to the table, and looks like they also want to invest about $500 billion into the US. So, look, a lot of investment is flowing into the US. Equity markets are loving that. S&P, new record highs last night. Nasdaq's about 300 points from its record high. So look, it's hard to make a bear case for US equities at the moment. A lot of this Trump euphoria, positive euphoria for equities at the moment, certainly that doesn't look like that's going to go away anytime soon. So I would imagine, look, Nasdaq probably will make a new record high shortly as well. So look, staying long US equities, this trade has been working exceptionally well, and the market, US equity market at the moment certainly is not scared of anything. And obviously, as we just mentioned, crypto, looking at making crypto the center of the universe, and part of that is obviously we've got some headlines about stockpiling crypto assets. So it didn't specifically mention a Bitcoin reserve, but obviously that would be part of it. So once again, the crypto space is still trading very positively. Hard to make a case in the short term for any meaningful, bear trade there. Okay, so that sort of wraps up some of the, I suppose the news on Trump and Trump trades at the moment. But here in Asia, we do have something very important coming up, and that's the Bank of Japan today. And yes, the market does expect the Bank of Japan to raise rates by 25 basis points to take the policy rate from 0.25% up to 0.5%. Now, that does not sound like a big deal, but when Japan actually does raise rates, it is a big deal for the simple fact that this will be the 5th time in 20 years that the Bank of Japan has raised rates. So we don't see that happen too often. And just to take everyone back last year when the Bank of Japan did raise rates, we actually did see on the back of that a huge yen carry trade unwind. Actually saw dollar yen down almost 1,000 points on the back of that yen carry trade unwind. So yes, I think that look, we've definitely got to respect any time the Bank of Japan raises rates. So I would certainly be focused on that today. The market, though, is at the moment trading into it. Basically, I suppose, quite. Quietly is probably the best way to sum that up, because we've just seen dollar yen literally trade a range of just 150 points all week, which is a pretty tight range for dollar yen, from 155 up to 156.5, and we sort of closed around that 156 level this morning. But look, I'd suggest even though yes, it is a known, it's not a surprise that the Bank of Japan is going to be hiking today, but I would suggest it's probably the way forward is going short into the meeting, maybe with a stop up towards 150, 157. But the most action will come from press conference after the decision when Ueda speaks, and just how what his thoughts are on the future direction of Japanese rates, or whether or not they're comfortable maybe seeing how the dust settles on this rate hike before they make decisions on any future rate hikes. So certainly yes, 2 hours later after the Bank of Japan's decision, the press conference is also somewhere where potentially we're going to see some decent volatility on that. Okay, so that sort of wraps up what's going to happen today. Tonight there's really no meaningful economic data, but again, obviously we probably will be getting Trump headlines, so you need to watch out for those. Anyway, it's an Australia long weekend this weekend, holiday on Monday for Australia Day, so we will probably check back with you early next week post that.